So the title today is Data is Poetry and Storytelling Through Code, Numbers, and Stats, otherwise datafication of our senses. And before we started, I did ask everyone, which a lot of people did admit they had problems, thinking of their second favorite color and second favorite food. And this is part of why I believe in the datafication of our senses, because the poetry that is within ourselves can be datafied, but sometimes it takes the right amount of creativity and the right amount of insight to do. So, oh, and I also realized I did not share my screen. Let me sew into that color thing. Yes, datafication of our senses. So you just got in. I am a creative coder, experience enhancer. So what I creative code usually can be poetry, music, animation. And during the year of 2021, I decided to hammer down on like what I knew with true data science, and then did that 14-week data science boot camp. And then I decided to like really deep dive and mix in like data science, creative coding, poetry, music, animation, you name it, all into one. And that was the goal. And that's what came up with like how what you're gonna hear today. And then before I start, this is my motto when everyone asks me. Code is poetry. Poetry is code. Code is expression where experiment roams. And to give a little insight, because I know not all of you are used to creative coding or whatnot, what does creative datafication mean to me? It adds another layer to an experience, playing with data sets that occur in our daily lives. We also can see how the numbers flow and what outcomes can manifest themselves, and also take mundane stuff and observe them from a new lens. So now, before I go into it, I'm gonna play something for y'all right now. I think if you just heard the music, I'm gonna replay it. And what I want you to do while listening to the sounds, I want everyone in the chat to write what they think their experience. So if you feel like you're happy when you listen to this, if you feel you're in nature, sad, hungry, write it down while you're listening to this sound. And I hope you can, if you cannot hear the sound, let me know. So while you're listening, what emotions, what thoughts are going through your head? All right. So I'm going to just pause that for now. What if I told all of you that those TSL is actually, those were not unorganized sounds? What you actually heard, if you look at my screen, what you actually heard is this color. So let me click on the actual thing. So you see this color over here? Oh, hold up. Yeah. Hold up. You see this color over here? That's actually what you heard. You actually heard the color 3E021B. And this is like part of like that datafication process I was talking about, where I decided to do a whole data sonification using colors. So in this next sound, as you can see the colors on the side, this is the color red. So in this, I use the color, any number that's found in the color database. And actually I can go, let me type it right now. Let me just show you, like, you see, because we don't always think about color as data sets, but you see colors, all colors have these numbers. So I took an array of colors that were chosen for an event and decided to make sounds only using these colors. And that's what you heard. So in the next one you're going to hear, well, we already used a shade of red. So let me get an earthy green color. So in that one earthy, I just got a request which I can actually showcase for now. Let me get to that. So for the sounds, what I did, I used a program called Sonic Pi, which is a Ruby derivative, and that's how I actually did the datafications of the colors. So let me show you the first ones. While my software loads, let me go back to my slide. So one thing that's cool about data sonification is that if you have things that can use ratio, so like fractions, like let's say 2 out of 5 people said this while 1 out of 7 people said something else, you can actually follow this doing something called Euclidean rhythms. And Euclidean rhythms, I think, is a very important notion, because what it basically states is that in our head we actually can tell what is a musical genre by the beats. So let me just go down to a list. And what does it mean is that, so let's say, for example, you say 2 out of 4 people are dancing. And including rhythms, what that means is that it has two ons and in a class of 4. So if I clap my hand and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, that will be 2 4s. Or if it goes 2 5s, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can use that rhythms, and these are stuff that naturally we adapt when we listen to music, as you can see. And then, like, so the fast pace that you sort of hear when you listen to Caribbean or African music, a lot of that can be or even Latin music, a lot of that can be considered from the 7/8 and 7/12s. And now let me show you my code. I got a code request, so let me just change the screen for that. So yeah, so in the color of 4C, the red color I just showed you, these are the code that makes it. So all the numbers, as you can see, are numbers that are only found in that color. And this is just some of, like, the later ones are going to be more complicated, because this was my first attempt and I just wanted something simple. So for these ones, I didn't use a lot of the numbers. I just used enough that can give every color its personality. So yeah. And if there's any questions, let me know and I could always do it, because I do love talking about this. And one of the most important things is that you learn this in data science, but it's the same thing when we're talking about creative coding. You have to explore your data, you have to experiment with it, and you have to play. And I emphasize play, 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 play. Because just like I did in the beginning, when I asked everyone, what is your second favorite food? What is your second favorite color? Everyone stumbled. And that's because sometimes we don't play enough with our own senses or play enough with data to realize that sometimes we are geared towards a certain way. And what do people always say, especially Auntie Kim? She always says, when it comes to data, You got to explore it. You got to understand that data. And that is where I try to do with these experiments that I'm like doing with y'all. So how do I do data science with my creative life coding? Interaction, reflection, collaboration, talking with y'all, and then misdirection. So the same thing about that second favorite color, favorite food. That is something that it is a data set because we all have second preferences, right? There is ranks. And when you do data science, there's a lot of classification issues like, okay, where do people think this will go in? And then randomness, because we are living data sets. So before I get into like another set of data sonification, what I want everyone to think about is this following thing. If if I ask everyone here what is the color red to them, the color red would not come in the same shade. As you can see in the data set that I showed you of the color, every red has a different color, right? Like pink. So how come we cannot think like that? So let's think in colors. We know that even the color red is not a uniform agreed upon thing. And that's how I approach data, that I do not assume that people know stuff, but I also don't assume that people don't know stuff. I respect that while I'm doing these like creative coding things, that people come with their own data set in their mind. And for me, live coding, there's live coding where you live code, but for what I do live coding is that I perform with code. So I do performances both visually, auditorily, and even with some poetic live coding languages where you see my code while I do it. So in real time you get the results. And Sonic Pi is a very good example of that. And this leads to the next thing. Everything can be an inspiration to datafied. Steps a day, heartbeat during a workout or coding sessions, word in a sentence, or color to sound. So for the next data sonification, what I'm going to do, I'm going to play the sound of heartbeats. And this is actually related to hypertension. So when you hear certain sounds that sound muffy is actually the rate of hypertension in certain communities. So I'm just gonna. Also, thank you for sharing, Anthony. I don't know if everyone could hear that heartbeat. So that actually takes into account that 32 to 38% of people that live in the South, like in like 9 states, have a 32 to 38% occurrence of having hypertension. So when you heard the offbeats, that was actually the sign of like the percentage of people actually having hypertension. So even though you did not see a visualization, just that I was able to get a sound that sounded like a heartbeat, you can feel that tension while I talk to you about it. And then I have another one, a similar vein. Yes, exactly. A nice way to imagine data, because even though you do not understand, as humans, when it comes to sound, we have been trained to listen to different things, right? So, when it comes to visualization, you usually see time series analysis. So, you see up, down, left, right. But when it comes to sound, our ears can pick up things like tempo. We can pick up things like beat, right? The one, two, But now, what if I change the pitch of my clap? That's another thing. So with sound, you can actually choose like 6 to 8 variables that the ear can pick up. And what then? It's actually known that like in astrophysics, sometimes they will do data sonification because sometimes the if you like perimeter map to pitch, the ear can pick it up faster than the eyes can see because we are trained to listen to like albums. And that's one of the things that we underestimate when it comes to accessibility, that human beings learn in different ways. Like some people might not be great at writing, but if you tell them to recite a lyric that they listen to, they can. So sort of the similar vein where how do we make data accessible? Why not try to get different people information into it? And this leads us to one of my favorite things lately, colorscape, which you saw from the whole thing. And the whole point of colorscape for me is how do I get as many senses in one feeling? So in colorscape, what I do have is songs as sonification templates, visual pieces to a colorscape evaluation, food and color, how life bleeds into color, genre making, music theory, blending with color theory. All of this might not make sense, but like I showed you, this is all about storytelling. So now we're going to go back to that food thing. Now, now, before I go to this thing, what I want everyone in the chat to try to do is, can you think of food that is also a color? Like what food do we eat has also a color correspondent? If you can write some answers in the chat. Orange, tomatoes, grapes. Yeah, those are good answers. But now we're going to go into the visualization part. What if I told you that almond is a color, apple crisp is a color, avocado green, black bean, brownies, burgundy, Chelsea cucumber, chili pepper, lemon, milk, mint, onion, red pepper, salmon, tartar. These are things that we don't actually think of color, but you can actually Google this because it actually took me a while to research this. Is that these are all colors. And what is cool also with another thing that people don't know about Tableau is that you can actually color coordinate it. So what I decided to do is that like you see with almond, that is the actual shade of color next to it. Because I wanted to give that authentic feeling when I was doing this. I wanted people to really see like, oh, you can be creative. So I decided food because we all have food meals. And that enough would be good because you see, so if you ever use Tableau, this is visualization of the RGB average in snack form per meal. So you see the color tea green, watermelon, grape fizz. This is the average RGB, so red, green, blue value. So this goes from a range of 0 to 225. And what you're seeing actually here, so like you see mint chocolate, it's a bit earthy green. So in these things, I actually took the average of the color of that meal. And yes, all the meals are actually legit because I actually looked at recipes that had the things. This could actually Morgan. That was, you know what's funny? That was the actual thing. When I first did this, I'm like, you know what? Is there a correlation between food and color? And that was actually what started. I'm like, can I find a data set that will go in? So let me actually go in. And this is cluster analysis to see which ones goes in. Let me actually get out of this. So I wanted to see if there was an advancement. And yes, Anthony, there's peach, there's olive. So in my second round of, I call this dip and code colorscape, I am going to add more food colors. So what I decided to do was add calories. So you see, I actually organized it by chicken, dessert, drink, goat, and seafood. And then I decide to see if there's correlations between calories and the colors. And then what you see on the map right now is that since I also wanted a fictional element, I realized that once again, when you like do exploratory data analysis, that's that you look at your data and try to see. I realized that the x and y values of colors actually do a great job of acting as coordinates. So then I decided that why don't I make my own world? So the dots that you see on the thing are the average x and y values that naturally come in colors. And then using Tableau Map, I was able to give them locations. And then after going to locations, I was able to do like, oh, this is where a meal come from. This is where ingredients come from. So I was able to show growth. So you see like this dot moves from like Central Asia, Western Asia to like Nigeria. And then I actually took the geographic coordinates to make them that like Burgundy wine was found in Nigeria in 1922. And then you see the calories. Once again, yeah. So I did that. So yeah. So I mapped the thing. So I actually looked at all of the color value things that you saw on the other websites that you saw from this website. And then I realized that you see the XY value over there that I just highlighted look very similar. So I mapped the XY2 coordinates, and then I map. You see the colors that are have negatives over here. I decided that since a lot of these numbers have negatives, it will look good on a graph to show up and down. So I can use those also as vertical momentums. And then I realized that when I added the calories, some foods were big, some foods were small. As you can see here, when I started, like, this is the size of the calories per color and what they were. So, for example, an almond is actually a drupe, which is actually a fruit. But I did not want to write fruit, so I wrote a drupe. That's some things I learned. And the colors are actually based on the colors, once again, that are found in the thing. So, this is the size of the calories per class that I found in the meals. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Let me just show you some of the up and downs. And then, of course, I have to start mapping not only them to a country. Then after I had the country, I'm like, oh, I can do sonification again. Okay, yeah, I can actually do that. So I will do that actually right now. Yeah, so that was the interesting thing, Tanisha. That was the actual thing. I was thinking that, okay, if I'm doing colorscape, some people could be colorblind, and since I'm using actual colors, I cannot change it because that will go in. And that's where I decided to do the sonification that you see on the screen. Because I'm like, if I do a sonification, then I could help discern some of those things by giving colors personalities that they will carry throughout. So that's why. So it's an experience that, let's say, like, two people, like, one is like, I was thinking, if one person is colorblind or has hard of seeing and one person is hard of hearing, can I evoke a feeling that they get from that color or they get from that sound? And then I decide to choose food, because if they also eat food, how does eating food differ when you know what colors is in the meal? And then what if I told you that, oh, let's say you go to a restaurant and I tell you you're going to choose your menu by how it sounds. How would that differ? So, and then after this, we're going to go back to that question about the hypertension and the heartbeats. So, for this one, I don't drink, but I know some people might have had a red Merlot. So, this is like the numbers in the red Merlot. So that's the sound of Ren Marlowe or Marlette. I think I'm mispronouncing it. But I gave it a personality, and due to the XY coordinate, I think it was situated in a desert. So what I was thinking, okay, if someone was drinking with using the numbers and that geographic location of XY, I could probably try to do something that like you're being in a desert and you're seeing a mirage. Because like being drunk in a desert when you're dehydrated, you're probably going to see stuff. So I wanted that to be mimic in the sounds, just using those sounds and colors. And then we're gonna go another one. Um, let's have some curry rice and chicken. Yeah, so that's curry rice and chicken. And the reason for the sounds is because for that one, I'm like once again, I'm just using curry rice and chicken are colors. So I'm just using the numbers that are found the colors. But on that one, I wanted sounds that showed the sense of process, right? Because rice, chicken, curry, how we get it is very process like. Yeah, and that's the thing, Morgan. I was thinking that like how do I break down the data of what we do every day, right? And then once I start doing this, I will go around seeing trees and seeing dogs, and I'm like, what are the color values? Like it made me see the world in a different way, and that is part of why I wanted to showcase during Black and Data because one of the things is reasons why I want to do this is because people be like, data science is this, data science is that. No, there's so many different ways to do data science because data science is just a form of storytelling. It's just a form of poetry. So who is to tell you that you have to do it one way? Yes, you have to understand the basics, but who is it to tell you that you don't have a voice that matters or this matter does not thing? And you see, reading the comments in the chat, people are already thinking, oh, could it be used for healing? Can it be used to translate this and that? And that is the feelings I want to evoke. Because even though I'm doing an art form, the process is still rooted in data science. So what if I just switch it to like what colors do people gravitate to healing? Is the healing principle of a color or a leafy thin like green? Is it potential that it's just the green that's the thing? And then maybe if we had more green color stuff, people might just be healthier. Is that a placebo effect? So these are the type of things that I'm trying to like promote. And I'm not taking anything away from the rest of the thing. I'm learning a lot. But whenever we think data science, we think health, we think this. But what about ourselves? Now I'm going to go back to the question before about the whole heartbeat and hypertension thing. But while I do that transformation, the human imagine that the human body is a computer, and everything that you see, touch, hear, taste, and smell are part of that thing. How many gigabytes do you think? What data do you think? Do you think when you say something is stinky, how do you think your body translate that? And fun fact that I learned in psychology is that our sense of smell is actually one of our first defense mechanisms because when something is smelly, you actually get averted to it. So how do you quantify that? Like imagine some people like certain perfumes. Some people do this, some people do that. So what about is it like a perfume of a certain color, can that change your smell? And they have done research on that where like if you change the color of a drink, so let's say you take green and it's actually lemonade, the fact that it's green might change how your taste buds taste that thing. So it's no different to what I'm doing here, that by if you did not know the sounds were of a certain color, you would not act a certain way. But since I'm telling you and I actually have that whole graph, that whole visualization, now since I tell you that this is curry rice and chicken, I have already changed your data set or your biases and prejudice towards that sound, because no matter what, since I told you it's curry rice and chicken, you have to look at it through that lens. And that's one thing that I just want to like showcase really in this, is that we are in charge of our narrative. We can be in charge of a narrative, and we should be in charge of our narrative. And this is one way to do that. And thank you, Morgan. That's the thing. It's like people are like, you can't be creative with sciences. Yes, you can. You just have to open up yourself to it. So let me go back to that question someone asked before about the whole heartbeat, because I do have that code on me. And let me just make sure I have the full code. Okay, I do actually have the full code. So let me switch screens. Window. Okay. Bam. Okay. This. Let me just switch this around for purpose of being able to read it. Okay. And yes, Anthony, I do have a GitHub. I actually have a page where you can check the whole Colorscape experience. My GitHub is Illestpreacha, and the website for the Colorscape is this. I think I have to add the HTTPS. And now, yeah, so you can find me on all social media, Illestpreacha, and it's this. So I don't know who asked me the question about the heartbeat. So the first thing I did is that I did a whole research on this. So this is actually information that is comes straight from the CDC. So what I did for this one is that I had a design document. So what I had is that I have a sound at the 36 second to represent the death, because unfortunately that's the hard rate. I'm going to have another sound on the 40th second. That's to represent heart attack. But what I actually did in the video that I made for this is that I actually did that manually. And here. So let's look at this piece of code. So in this code is, I think this is hypertension. So in this code, I decided to do a mix. So I decided to do a mix that 54% of Black adults in the States do have a form of hypertension. So what I decided to do that is that for the Black adults, I would do a crush, because it's sort of a distortion sound of 54. While where you see like this says 36% of Hispanics have it, I decided to use a crush of 36. And a crush is that's a distortion sound. Because so hypertension is sort of a distortion of your heartbeat. So that's why when you heard certain sounds, it had a certain distortion. And what I wanted to do is try to mimic that distortion by the thing, so that when you hear it and when I tell you, you will hear the difference between the two. And then the second mix, I wanted to show how much people have it under control. So they said Hispanics are at 1 of 4, 24%. And the same thing for Black adults. Then for the BPM, because I can choose the BPM, I decided to do a heart rate average of 100, because it's the heart rate. And this is where you see the difference in the beat, because it said that 1 out of 4 deaths are caused by heart disease. So what I decided is to have 3 tempos, because sleep is the tempo. So sleep is like 1, 2, 3. And then when you see the 0.25, it just makes it faster. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you heard that difference between the 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4. So I wanted the 4 to be the sound that you heard. So while you heard that sonification, what you were hearing was like that cutoff. And then this is how it sounds like. as work in comparison to, let's say, an Hispanic adult. And even though the difference was subtle, your ears can tell the difference between the first one where there was a higher level of distortion versus the second one. So I hope that answered your question and showed the thing. So basically, if you know anything about visualization, or if you don't, what I did is that I did the same thing that you would do on a visual graph, but I just mapped it out sonically. And then with how Sonic Pi works, I found ways to implement as much data in a piece of things. And then yeah, you can like, it will be interesting to hear these profiles together. Yeah, actually, I sort of did that recently with the profiles together. So let me go back to some other code, other simple code. Because I see someone that said, where do they start, and inspiration. And honestly, that's why I say experiment, play, and play, and play. Because a lot of it just comes down to how much you're willing to play. And playing is very important. And I want to show you like a pattern thing where I just read, and I think I have the code for that too. So let me just go back to my window. Here we go. So now what you actually are seeing in this one is the RGB value of the food moving around in the thing. So I like to call this data animation. And all I did in this one is just take the numbers and have them move across the screen. Because now I'm trying to show you the different types of creative coding things you can do with data. So the actual color you're seeing is the actual color of that meal. And this is just how it rotates in. And it does a loop of all 47 ingredients that I have and the data that's within it, the RGBs. So I think this is like Chelsea cucumber. This is that earth. And a lot of this is just to show that you can do data from the smallest thing. You can do data from the smallest thing. And if sonification interests you, I can send you a link. Oh, there's actually one of the first sonifications I actually saw was someone using Sonic Pi and rare wine, and to show the different years and months of wines. So that's cool. So right now, what I drop in the chat is a sonification design database where like it shows you the different types of sonifications and what people did. And for like the type of like creative sonifications that you can do and creative visualizations, there's of course Python, Tableau, but there's also P5JS. And in P5JS, there's something called the coding train. Where a dude by the name of Daniel Shefman actually shows you how to like do data from like JavaScript. And now I could potentially say like, okay, well, actually, and you could do the same thing in Python. But he also has another one which I cannot find at the moment. that showcase how to do a visualization of earthquakes all around the thing. And it's called Coding Train. I'm going to drop the link. I'm going to drop this in the chat. Thank you very much, Anthony. And what's good, this is a nice entryway of creative coding. There's also Sonic Pi. That's also good. And just straight up playing and experimenting. If you want data sets, the reason why I chose colors is because a lot of times when you have large data sets, they're not clean. And colors seem like one of the cleanest data sets that I can choose. So I wanted to make sure I had a data set that was clean so I didn't have to worry about data cleaning. Because in real life, data science, you have to clean. So I did not want to do that. And you can go to websites like Kaggle. You can go on GitHub, and a lot of people have clean data sets. And then you can use that and find ways to map and find different ways to do it. But even with real life, like you can find ways. And to like get the proper color scaling, and then once you go in, like once I started doing this, I realized that I can also add AI. I can also add this. So I added AI to a mythology because I'm like, let me just make a role. So with all the information I had before of the colors, I did a word association. So you know how in history we have words that are associated with apple, words that are associated with cherry, words that are associated with grapes. And I did that. And then in this, I did a whole like meal fact classification index where I started giving lore to the thing. So like in these ones that are like human based, there's sauce, slice, bake. This one there's vegetable peanut, and then I would make poetry to it. So data poetry, all this. And it's just me having fun. So then I added dates. So now I have like time series because there's always a thing that people are like, can you do time series data? So I'm like, let me add dates of when in this world they found the things. So then I was able to like make a robust thing of like when things were found, what months they were found, what languages, what sounds. And when you think about it, because when you think about it, I just made a whole world, if you realize, right? I gave all these colors, sizes, I gave all of them attributes, I gave them all voices, and I gave them history, I gave them like word in nature, I rebound it. And that's the power of data science. You can make your own world. You can make mundane stuff be important. And that's what I wanted to showcase today, just how if you're just open-minded, you can even take a simple thing as food and color and make it into this whole world. And you can do things like sentimental analysis, word counters, and get beautiful data visualizations as well that vary. So I do not know if anyone has because I know I am over time. So if you have any questions, I am going to stick around. So if anyone has questions, let me know. Thank you very much, Hope.
Thank you very much for sharing with us. Yeah.
So if there are any questions in the chat, I will stick around.
And Anthony, thank you for sharing additional resources as the presentation was going on.
Yeah, Anthony has all those links. I have not heard a couple of those, so I'm excited. What did he say?
Hey, everybody! Thanks. I'm just doing my DJing as he's doing it. So I gotta say, thanks a lot for everything. You've opened my mind as well. I just dropped some links to a lot of artists that inspire me as well. so you can follow him along.
Like Shirley Wu is a good one. Shirley Wu,
Right.
that's a good one. I listened to Shirley on a podcast I listened to, and another one that's like an award-winning artist is, I'm gonna drop the link, is Ticinia Alochochi. Oh wow, Data Sketches. You got that book too.
Oh yeah. So this is Shirley Wool and Nadi Bremer's book. So if you really want to dig into kind of the stuff that he's been talking about, take a look at this one.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, that's the thing. I just like once I started, and then I'm like, oh, I built a world, and then I just like kept building the world, and then I added AI, machine learning, and now I added like actual characters. So like I'm gonna update that on the site like by tonight or tomorrow, where I actually use something called Art Breeder, where I sort of use like lemons and some of the food in like the colorscape world to have like kids and offsprings, and there are creatures that are like, I have built this whole world from just data science, so it's cool. I kid that I call it data science fiction, where it's like truthful data science, but it's also fiction. So that's what you can call it, data science fiction, or fictional data science, or data fiction science. I'm still trying to figure out the words. So yeah, so thank you very much. If you want to follow me on all platforms, yes, I'm going to plug myself a bit.
You should absolutely do that.
Find me on
Illestpreacha everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
Everywhere.
And yeah, and then if you're wondering what I'm going to do next on this, I am doing a lot of like there's something called, like I was telling Sia before, there's something called Nano Genmo, where you use different languages to try to generate 50,000 words of text. So I've been using some of the Python skills and JavaScript skills and some creative coding skills to come up with ways to make like different 50,000 word novels. And I use quotation novels because some of the grammar in them are iffy, but it's fun. So thank you very much, everyone, once again.